Hey guys, gonna talk about Columbo. I know it's going back a ways, and why would I talk about Columbo? Well, I think it's a cool show, and I think not enough people talk about Columbo. It's a great television series that probably was always popular among like 50-year-olds, like 50-year-olds today and 50-year-olds back when that show was on the air. So probably not a lot of people from the younger crowd jumping in to get behind Columbo. But I love that show, man. It's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. For you guys who don't know, it started in the 1970s. It lasted up until, I want to say, the mid to late 90s. I'll have to check on that. But it's basically a series of self-contained movies. When I say movies, the way these things are done. It's a show. It's a detective show starring essentially a one-eyed actor, Peter Falk, who lost his eye when he was a kid, so he has a glass eye. It gives him kind of this unique, perplexed look all the time, which for a detective show is great because then it's showing you that the detective is always in deep focus or concentration. Besides that, though, it is, like I said, a series of movies. They go to all kinds of different locations. You're going in anywhere from mansions over to England in one case. You're going into Hollywood studios, into big electrical power plants. So the sets on these TV episodes are amazing. And each little show is like this little adventure. You get to go there and you get to basically learn a complete new set of characters. Aside from Peter Falk or Columbo, who, as far as I know, does not have a first name. It's just Lieutenant Columbo. But like I said, a series of movies. The episodes themselves are a little longer than standard television. It's not necessarily a half hour. It's, I think some of them are 45 minutes, but a lot of them are an hour and a half. And the unique thing about Columbo is who the killer is because he's a homicide detective, so they're all murder cases, but you know who the killer is right at the beginning. And that is interesting because you're the viewer and you actually have a better understanding of the situation than the main character, Columbo. But what Columbo does is through a series of, really interesting conversations with people, he gets people to somewhat trap themselves and almost be part of the story. And he does that by really leveraging their egos because he's always being faced up against these intelligent people. These are not just dumb criminal cases where a thug just shoots somebody in the alley or something. It's usually somebody who's masterminded a plan to commit a murder and then get away with it. So that might be, hey, making it look like somebody broke in and killed the guy in a fit of rage. Or it might be, hey, I'm going to try and frame somebody else to make them look like they're the murderer. And some of these plots are pretty complex in the sense that, like, I remember one time there's a guy, he's like a general manager of a football game. And in the middle of the game, he drives like across the city in an ice cream truck, kills his nephew, and then gets back to like play the second half of the game or something. And it's like that's a lot of effort to kill somebody and to come up with a master plan. But he somehow always solves the crime. This is what's interesting about Columbo too, is the moment he meets the person who's the killer, he gets almost like a sixth sense about it. And that's kind of what I figured is his skill set, his, je ne sais quoi, his mysterious asset that he has that other detectives don't have. And it's great. And then the rest of the show is basically him affirming what he believes and then finding the evidence that proves his theory. So that's what it is. He's a detective who has really, really good instincts. But the other thing about it is he always acts kind of dumb. Most detective shows, like let's say you were watching, I don't know, Miami Vice or NCIS or something like that, if you like those shows. The lead characters are charismatic, good-looking people who are physically active, who look like they could, tussle and take on the world and defeat all the criminals. Whereas Columbo's kind of a slob. He walks around in an old trench coat. He drives a really old, like, French beater. And then he shows up and he's talking to a lot of times these millionaires and these celebrities, and people just look down on him. And what he does is he just kind of makes everybody else seem like they're smarter than he is. And some people figure out that he's actually a pretty intelligent guy. But for the most part, a lot of people just think, oh, this is an idiot. And so he'll do things like go, oh, I'm just a dumb detective. Yeah, I wonder what could have happened. What would have caused this situation to occur? And then the killer will sometimes come up with their own, conspiracy theories or their own hypothesis, and then Columbo will go along with it. And he feeds this into people. And the funny part is, when you watch the show, you'll say, wow, this is ridiculous. People are not that dumb. And then you live a couple of decades of life and you realize that show was probably more spot on than anybody wants to admit. Because people have egos. And I learned this in the military and I learned this in the corporate world, is if you try to be the smartest person in the room, you'll probably get nowhere. But if everybody kind of thinks you're, maybe not an idiot, but not the smartest person in the room, a lot of doors open up because people feel good when they think they're smarter than you. People feel good when they feel that they know more than you and that they can predict what you're going to do, and they will open up and they'll almost bend over backwards to help you. So there's something to be said about not always trying to be the sharpest guy in the room all the time, right? And if you've ever, been in a situation where you have to be in charge of people or lead people, people lie to you all the time in those positions. Like anybody who reports to you, at some point, they will lie to you, right? Just like you, if you report to somebody else, at some point will lie to your supervisor. It might be just a little white lie or something, but it's going to happen. But if you try to make it out that you know what's going on and try to, get them to admit a lie by trying to prove them, a lot of times it doesn't work. Whereas if you just kind of go, what the hell happened? And you go, oh, really? And you just get really interested in what they're doing and they try and tell some little lies and you just look for inconsistencies. I don't know how to describe it, but you will learn how to spot liars. And it's a good skill to have. And so as an adult, I had a greater appreciation for Columbo than I did when I first watched it as a kid. And, there's the famous kind of meme of Columbo where he goes, hey, just one more thing, sir. Because what he does is he has a conversation. He asks a question that seems completely irrelevant. So people get comfortable saying stuff to him. And then he leaves and people are like, oh, okay, I guess conversation's over. I've killed somebody. I've gotten away with it. The detective talked to me. And then after they think the conversation's over, he'll just go, hey, just one more thing. And then it seems to be a way to kind of get people who they've already thought they want to just give them the information that they need. So he'll ask all these non-relevant questions first, and then that final question is usually the one that provides him with the information that he needs. Anyhow, it's just something to check out. I mean, it's not something like you have to watch the whole series. I've talked about this before where I don't like shows now where literally they have like a 5-season arc planned. Or like in the case of Game of Thrones, they were like, yeah, we have 7 seasons, but we don't even know how the series is going to end yet, but we're creating episodes. I like single episode stories, and Columbo is the one that I feel a lot of shows should emulate if they're trying to do that. Really, really good stuff. Really good mysteries in there. Really good series of conversations. A lot of cat and mouse play that goes on between Columbo and some of these other folks. The best episodes are probably the ones where he kind of ends up explaining why he felt something. Like there was one where I think it was a private military training camp. So think of like Blackwater or Z or Dynacore, Triple Canopy, any one of those private military organizations, but back in the 1970s. Anyhow, one of them, the guy in charge, I guess he kills somebody. But the way Columbo finds out that the guy's a killer is he, based on the guy's personality, he goes, well, this guy's kind of a pompous ass, kind of arrogant, kind of feels that he's above everybody else. but then he sees him on the floor scrubbing mud off of the floor, and Columbo thinks to himself, why the hell would this guy lower himself to the level of a janitor? And that's kind of piques his intuition. And so those episodes are good because it basically shows you how his thought process goes. But he's also a really likable guy. Has a likable dog too that I think is literally called Dog. But and he appears in some episodes. But each episode, brand new cast of characters. You never know what's going to happen. You never know how it's going to play out. And once in a while, they will throw in a twist in there. Like there was one episode about, I guess it would be like the Kardashians of the time. Like there's a family. It's a guy who has like a really luxurious lifestyle, and think of like reality television. Before reality television, it was like reality magazines, and they frame a kidnapping, and Columbo thinks it's the correct. Thinks it's a real kidnapping, and then he thinks he solved it, but then he looks like a fool because it turns out it was just a hoax to get more publicity. But then there's a twist in there where essentially then a murder happens. But so they do shake things up a little bit. It's not always as straightforward as it can be. But I think the real premise about this show and what makes it really interesting is most crime shows, most mysteries are basically dependent on you watching just so you'll find out who the killer was. So the writing doesn't have to be that strong. If you think about it, you will watch a show, even though it's not that good, just to stay tuned until the end to figure out who the killer is. Not the case with Columbo. They do the complete opposite. They basically go, hey dude, this is the guy who did it. This is how he did it. This is how he thinks he's going to get away with it. And it looks like there's no evidence, but let's see if Columbo can figure it out. And so the whole show is the premise of his thought process, what he does to solve the crime, how he interacts with the person, and then really the cat and mouse game that happens with him just trying to outwit the person who's the killer. Anyhow, if you like my rant, feel free to subscribe. If not, that's okay. I wouldn't either. No, I would subscribe. Just I do more drawing videos than anything else on my shorts channel. But that being the case, check out Columbo. I guarantee you, if you like sort of a show where you need to do a little bit of thinking, and also a show that is not dependent on you watching every other episode up until that point. You can watch any Columbo episode independently, and it's great. I'd say check out Columbo. I think they have them on like Tubi, like Freevee. It's available. It's available if you have like those digital channels. You don't need to buy cable, or you don't have to pay for any of the episodes. They're out there. So anyhow, thanks for listening.